Okay, we're in Portland, Oregon today. We are going to do an install video on our flanged windows. And rather than hearing from me, the window guy, I've recruited Josh Salinger from Birdsmouth Design Build here in Portland to talk about how you do a good high-performance flanged window install. So Josh, what are the things we need to look at today?
So there's going to be two things that we're going to focus on really, and we'll go through lots of details, but the two main things we're going to focus on is making sure that we're dealing with the bulk water on the outside of the window, so that we're going to deal with the head and the two sides. And then as we get to the inside, we're going to make sure that we're air sealing on the inside on all four sides of those windows.
Awesome, so what's our first step?
First step is we're going to go head on inside. We're actually going to cut this open. We've got a window hole right about here. And that's where we're going to be placing our window. So the first thing we're going to do is cut this out and prep the window for the install.
Awesome, let's go take a look. For shipping, we put a protective base on each of our windows so that that flange is protected. It's not going to get broken off if it gets moved around. Really important thing, but also equally important, you need to take it off before you install the window. So Josh has taken this guy off. It's just held on with a couple screws at the bottom and they just get pulled off and the window's ready to install. All right, so now that we're on the inside, Josh, what's the first step we need to do?
So obviously we've got a rough opening framed out here, and we want to open this up so that we can install the window.
Okay, Josh, so you said that this is going to do both bulk water and air control?
That's right, yeah. So we're going to pay attention for the bulk water. We're going to get from the outside, the very top head part of the window right here,
okay,
and then both legs right here.
Okay.
But we're actually going to leave the bottom open from the water control perspective of
right,
this membrane right here.
Got it. So you are bringing your WRB all the way into the opening so that it's one continuous thing so that we can seal it both on the exterior to the window and then again on the interior to the window. Exterior being bulk water, interior being the air barrier.
That's exactly right.
Awesome.
Yep. Okay, so we're going to get the corner detailed here with our air and water control layer. So I got my piece of tape and I've got my tab right here. So I'm going to bend that right over the top, and I'll remove this bit of backing right here. And the stuff is incredibly sticky. So I'm going to pull that off. And I'm going to get this as tight in that corner as I can. Good. Smooth that out. And then what we're going to do is remove this backside here. Get my card back in here so I get that nice tight corner, and then bring that up. And then from here, I'm going to stretch this out to cover that corner. And then run my card over here to make sure that we get that pressure sensitive tape to fully bond to the blue WRB and all the substrates, that we get a really nice air and water control that's got a little bit of a slope that if any water gets back here, it'll just run to the outside. Okay, so we've got the window all detailed around. Our rough opening is protected. And what we did before we put this in is we did take a piece of cedar siding, some just lap siding, and we put that on so that the thinner end is pointing outward. So it's basically created a slope that goes to the outside. Now, the next step that we're going to want to do is we're going to get some setting blocks here. And this is going to make sure that our window sits nice and level as we put it in here. So all we do is just take some small scraps of the corresponding piece of lap siding right here. And what I'm going to do is put them so that the thicker end is towards the smaller end here. So what we're doing is creating a level plane right there. And so these two things will end up getting set here. And we're going to level these out to make sure that the window is nice and level. And I've got a couple of like various different types of shims and stuff that we're going to go through and make sure that we're getting this super level. This will then get fastened in here, and then we'll put some tape over this to protect that wood. And from there, the window should be ready to set.
All right, so we've got our WRB wrapped to the interior. We've sealed up the corners. We've shimmed it level, and now we're ready to install the window, right?
Exactly.
So for this job, I'm going to use a Woods Power Grip suction cup. These are amazing. I love them. And it just makes the job so much easier. The flanges on these can be kind of sharp, and so you really want to be careful with grabbing them. So a suction cup is going to make that a whole lot easier. Just pump it up. Eat your Wheaties every morning.
Okay.
So while Josh comes around to the outside to help me fasten this off, a couple things to be aware of when you're installing these windows. They're typically very stiff. Not a bad idea to check the squares on them before you start in case you need to drive them one way or the other with shims, but typically very, very stiff windows. So we can go ahead and start fastening this in. Yeah, so there's many ways that you can do a flanged window install, right? There's a lot of ways to do it right. There's even more ways to do it wrong though. So this is a awesome bulletproof belt and suspenders method that Birdsmouth uses. We're gonna go ahead and cover this with tape in a minute, but something I wanna highlight as Josh is sealing this off and screwing it down, these flanges are actually an applied flange to our View 7 window. So this window comes in both a flangeless and a flanged option. When the flanges are applied, they are sealed in and snapped in. However, there is a joint between the two types of plastic there. So we recommend the belt and suspenders method is to always seal across that joint. And Josh is gonna show us how we do that in just a minute.
So what I've got here is a couple of just 1/8" horseshoe shims right here. And these work really great. You could slip them just kind of behind the flange here. And we'll do that all the way along the bottom side of this guy here. Okay, so you can see what we've done is we've got all these horseshoe shims that are about 1/8 of an inch thick right here, and it's going to keep this flange off of the WRB just enough to allow for any water that might get back there to drain out and away from the building. And to finish this off, simply we're just going to screw the bottom off like we would any normal flange right here and go through that horseshoe shim, and that'll tighten it right up, and that's how we're going to leave that final install right there. We're not going to put any tape over the bottom of this.
All right, so Josh is finishing up with the drains at the bottom of the window. And I'm gonna go ahead and start with taping. So we're gonna start with the legs on each side, and then we'll do the top of the window. So as we talked about earlier, the flanges on our windows are an applied flange. They're not extruded integral with the frame. So what that means is that we're gonna wanna make sure our tape goes all the way onto the flange and then onto the frame of the window to seal that joint.
And there we've got our positive lap from our head flashing over our leg flashings here, and also to the top of the window frame. And so that should make for a really great water seal on all three sides with leaving this bottom open. So here we're all done with the exterior install of the window. Okay, here we're on the inside of the building here and looking at the inside of the window. And what we've got here is our air and water control. And what we're really paying attention to here is air control. So we're going to want to take our air control air here and connect it to the window, because the window is actually going to act as our air tightness component of the system here. So before we do that, we're going to want to make sure that we insulate between the window and the rough opening itself. And to do that, I've got a little bit of just rock wool insulation here. And all we really do is just kind of take little slices of this stuff. It peels apart pretty easily. And what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of jam this in between the frame and the rough opening. All right, well, we've got our rock wool installed in there. What we're gonna do next is we're actually gonna grab some backer rod. And what this is just kind of a rod of foam. And this is sized, comes in different sizes, comes in 1/2 inch, 5/8, all the way up to like pretty big diameters. Anyways, I've sized this for the gap right here. And we're simply gonna install that just inside of the window right here. Pretty simple. And we're gonna do this all the way around the entire perimeter of the window. And this serves an important function, and what it does, if you follow me over here, We want to create essentially an hourglass shape. And so we've got two surfaces right here that are going to move at different, paces from one another. We've got wood here and we've got a window right here. So they're different materials and they're going to move differently. And so what I want to do is put in this backer rod, which is essentially a circle right here. And then we're going to put some sealant in and we're going to tool that sealant so that it creates essentially this hourglass shape. And the reason we do that is so that we get the most possible adhesion between the sealant and the substrate on both sides here, so that seals really well. And we want to make this distance right here really thin so that allows these things as they move to allow it to stretch without putting too much pressure on here and breaking that seal. So that's what the backer rod itself is actually doing in this situation. Okay, now that we've got the backer rod installed along with the rock wool back there for our thermal control, we want to make sure we're completing that air barrier. So we'll blue tape this off. We'll get the sealant loaded up into our gun. We're going to then get that air dam installed in there, and then we're going to go through with a glazier's tool, and then we're going to create that back side of that hourglass shape in here, and we're going to connect the window itself to the blue stuff right here, which is our air control layer, so that we have a fully continuous air control layer. And it's really important that you do this around all four sides of the window here. So if water was to get into the window, it can run to the outside, but air is not going to be allowed to get from the outside to the inside. So at Birdsmouth, we like to use the sealant in the backer rod because we feel that that's going to be the most durable way to do this for the long term. Since this is a passive house, we want this to be here for a very, very long time. That said, there are other ways to do it that are perfectly acceptable. So a lot of people use tapes, and those tapes can bridge between the window frame itself and our blue air control layer. There's also expanding foam gaskets that can be used that you would install onto the window. You would install the window itself, and as the window sits there, it slowly expands and bridges the gap between the window frame and the rough opening itself. So there's 10, 20 different perfectly good ways to do this. This is the way that we've decided is most efficient and durable for our team.
All right, so we've covered the three main points that you need for a high-performance window install. 1, you need a bulk water control strategy. 2, you need an air sealing strategy on the interior. And 3, you need to make sure that opening is plumb, framed square, and then sloped to the exterior. Josh, thank you so much for your time showing us how you guys do this at Birdsmouth. If you don't follow Birdsmouth, absolutely need to. So Birdsmouth Design Build in Portland, Oregon, premier high-performance builder here. So thanks so much.
Yeah, it was great. I appreciate it. Cheers.